only mode.
Good afternoon. My name is Tracy Nyer, and I'm with the Virginia SBDC. I'll be your facilitator for today's webinar. For those of you who are not familiar, the Virginia SBDC is the largest and most effective provider of customized counseling and education for small businesses in Virginia. Most of our services are offered locally in 28 different locations throughout the Commonwealth. Today's webinar is one of our educational offerings and is part of our ongoing webinar series, Google and Beyond, Marketing and Managing on the Web. This series is designed to take a look at tools and techniques to help small businesses take their business to the next level. Today's topic is getting found on Google. All of our Google and Beyond webinars are presented by Ray Sidney Smith, web and mobile strategist, author of So Low Mo Success, Social Media, Local and Web Small-Based Business Marketing Strategy Explained, and president of W3 Consulting, and managing director of W3 Web Services. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type those questions in the question window and Ray will do his best to answer them. Without further ado, here's Ray Sidney Smith.
Thank you, Tracy, and thank you to the Virginia SBDC Network for having me here on the Beyond Google Marketing and Managing on the Web series. So first and foremost, if you have any questions, feel free to ask them now. As Tracy said, this is the time to get your questions answered. As well, feel free to ask questions on Twitter. If you have questions after the webinar, feel free to tweet those at me, hashtag them Beyond Google, and that way I know the questions are related to this webinar or the webinar series. And of course, follow at Virginia SBDC to stay in touch with them and to know about future programs and other informational and programmatic resources that they provide. It's always great to see the small businesses tweeting at the organizations that are supporting them, and that keeps everybody in the loop. So I wanted to start off with just sort of the reality factor here. You know, most Americans are now connected to the internet, probably, you know, one of the first world nations with the greatest saturation of internet connectivity. And on top of that, 50% of all of the searches done are being done on a smartphone. And finally, nearly 80% of all of those searches across desktop and mobile are done using Google. Basically, some kind of Google, right? Whether you're going to google.com or using Google services of the Google search app on your iPhone or on your Android device, you're basically using Google every day. Most people are. And we all sort of, as small business owners, need to kind of wake up and sort of savor the moment because this is it. We really need to understand Google. We need to figure out how to position ourselves, optimize ourselves, and then monitor the information that Google has about us and that is being put on the web about us so that we're better able to you know, profit from this vast network of people looking for products and services, having wants and needs, and us being able to satisfy them as local small businesses. So today's agenda is really to figure out, you know, where and how to position yourself on Google so that you can best, you know, get in front of your target audience. It's really important for you to figure out, you know, where you are, and we'll talk about that. Next up, we're going to talk about optimizing your website and blog and social media to align well with Google. I probably have some things here that most people will either enjoy and love hearing me say, and perhaps some of you who will have some chagrin at what I'm going to say, so stay tuned to that. And then finally, we're going to talk about some of the metrics and tools you can use to monitor, to make sure that you're aware of what's happening on Google in the more details. I think that the more business data that you have, the better business decisions that you can make. So it's really important that we do that. I'll leave a little bit of time for question and answer at the end, and I mean a little bit of time, and then I'll be happy to say after when Tracy closes out so that I can answer any other questions that you might have, but we'll leave about 30 seconds to a minute of Q&A if anyone has any questions, and then we'll stay on the line to answer any final questions as well. So let's get started. So as I said, we're going to be talking about positioning and then optimizing and then monitoring Google. We're going to start with positioning on Google. because it's really important for us to understand really what is Google and how it kind of works, right? For us to be able to really take advantage of that. And so first and foremost, we start out with two different sort of categories. The first category is organic. And on Google, we basically search for things, right? And as a business, as anyone who has heard me talk about Google before, it's really important for us to understand not just the relevance of a search, but the intent of the person doing the search. Why did they come to Google in the first place? We recognize that they came to Google for most likely organic reasons. That is, that they are looking for information to satisfy a want or need, and they believe that Google has that answer. They trust Google with being able to provide them with that information, and so therefore they come for that particular reason, okay? They don't necessarily come for the other side of the coin, which is advertising, but many times that is also a solution to their problem, whatever their want or need is. But the organic side is that someone has put information on the web, they know that it exists out there, and Google has gone ahead and indexed all of these various websites so that you're able to go ahead and find them easily, okay? Because as we all know now, if you want to look for something, you Google it. It's become a verb. You know to look to Google to find things, okay? And so Google answers your questions. Organic search looks at, of course, web pages and blog posts, and it's something that you as a small business owner should be publishing in some way, shape, or form. You should have a website, and it shouldn't just be a calling card anymore. It can't just be a business card or a brochure website. It needs to really be dynamic and engage the user in being able to interact and engage with you. And many times that's through a blog or some other tool or resource on your website. Many websites now have the ability for you to go ahead and log in and also to do e-commerce and so on and so forth. But basically, Google is looking to the web pages and the blog posts that you're publishing as part of that organic search. And I'm only talking here specific to small business, so there are other categories or verticals here, but I'm really going to focus on the big pieces for that for you. Next up is Google Maps. Literally, you are put on the map by Google so that they're able to locate your local business and many of the other review sites, the major one obviously being Yelp, and then secondary to that are many others, including TripAdvisor and Yext and so on and so forth, for being able to sort of get you in front of the audiences who are not only looking for you in a local capacity, but also reviewing you and giving feedback for other users who might want to purchase from your business. And then next up is video. We know that video is one of the most powerful, burgeoning aspects of the online world today. And we'll see, we went from sort of text and audio to now video, and we will see, well, pictures, I guess, images went along with that. We're now in video, and we'll see that then transcend to augmented reality and virtual reality at some point. But right now, the three big items in organic search are really going to be websites and blogs, Google Maps, and review sites and video. Now, just a minor clue here is that right before VR and AR, augmented reality and virtual reality, comes along, there will be the organic app side of things. That is, those businesses that choose to create apps that Google then indexes for being able to interact and engage. So if your business is local and you happen to have an app that you can develop around that local space and infuse into the Google world, then that app will also be indexed and is a very, very powerful organic piece. So just keep that in mind as you're sort of developing things. Okay, so that's one half of the side. Positioning yourself on Google is really understanding how to get yourself in front of them in those three capacities. And then there's the flip side. So one side is basically earning your keep on Google. Advertising is paying for your keep on Google, and both are valuable in different ways, but advertising is definitely one of them. Google's major advertising platform is called Google AdWords, and basically within the display network you can go ahead and be seen on desktop and mobile, and therefore position yourself on Google based on the keywords and also the advertising and images and even video that you display using the Google AdWords network. So we have organic and advertising, right? And we want to basically have a good mix of these so that your audience sees you, right? In marketing, we talk about the 7 touch points, right? Someone has to have roughly around 7 to 13 touch points before they buy from you, and hopefully those will be positive touch points, informative, and of course persuade them then to act. So we want to make sure that we're getting people, you seen by people through these mechanisms. Okay. First and foremost, I really think that there's a sort of a tangential piece here to Google, and that's the offline component. So many of the businesses that I come into contact with around the country say to me, oh, well, Ray, you know, I'm working on SEO and I'm working on the SEM side and I'm paying for Google AdWords, and then I walk into their retail storefront or their office and there's nothing that tells people or engages them to get them on Google, to get them to engage with the business by searching for them or by utilizing the pieces and products that Google has created to help you interface better. And so I really believe in the offline component here, and I think that a lot of other folks don't talk about this enough, which is that Google provides, you know, when you get listed on Google Maps, which is Google My, you know, the Google My Business piece, which is the far right logo that you see on your screen now. If you are one of the businesses that has been indexed so that Google can do Street View inside your business, there are so many ways in which you can get you know, basically Google to send you stickers and other kinds of things to be able to put up and around your business so that people know that you are on Google and that they can go there and commit new information, to review your business. All of those things. Call people to action in the physical spaces where you have them, and that way that'll engage them to produce more content and more engagement with them, with Google, which means you become more popular to the search engine. Okay, so what happens if you have none of these stickers, or Google has sent you none of them? Make them yourself. I mean, you know, there's no reason why you can't put up a flyer, why you can't make your own signs that let people know and engages them to go ahead out there. And I don't just mean to Google. It might also be to Yelp if that's a very large part of your reviewed, you know, business, and as well, you know, other services. Engage people. If you have a mobile app, engage them to download the app. Give them the information. You can put it on your receipts. You can email it to them through, you know, email it to them with your invoices. But you really need to engage people offline to the online component, to the Google component, and you can do that very simply and easily just by putting up stickers or signage, or you know, engaging them in the documentation that you exchange and the materials that you exchange with them also. So there's a real important offline component to this as well. Okay, so that's sort of positioning yourself on Google, and I want to make sure that I answer any questions, so feel free to ask questions as you have it relating to any of those things. I think that it's really important for you to really focus on, you know, making sure you have your website set up and all those other things. I'll get to that in the optimizing section, but I just really wanted you to understand those sort of 5 components, right? And just so we can review this, right, you have your website and or blog, basically what you're publishing on your own property, what you're publishing on the Google Maps and other review sites, what you're publishing in terms of video, how you're advertising, and then finally how you're engaging with your audience in an offline perspective. Okay, so you really need to, you know, focus on those 5, and that's going to help you understand how to position yourself better through optimizing on Google. So really pay attention to those 5 areas, and I think that you'll do well. So where to start when you're positioning on Google? I think it's really important to start with the most basic stuff, and then of course if you have more intermediary or advanced questions, feel free to ask, but I'm going to start you off on the basics. First and foremost, you know, businesses infrequently, or maybe you've done this in the past but you haven't done it recently, you really just need to Google your own business. Search for your business on Google. See where and how you show up. And I don't mean just you. I think that everyone on your staff, everyone that you know in your personal life, if you have friends who are maybe a couple towns over or maybe in another state, have them go ahead and search you and your business on Google to see what they see. Have them do screenshots, send them along to you. But it doesn't just start with your business name, okay? I think that's important for you to search for your business name, but it should also be the brands and products that you provide. How are people finding you and seeing you when people do searches for those three major items. This should also include important keywords with the location involved. So if I'm looking for a dentist in Alexandria, Virginia, or I'm looking for a business lawyer in Roanoke, or I'm looking for, a retail gift of some kind, so maybe I'm looking for Hallmark cards in Danville, well, I should be able to do that search and find your business. That's going to be the ultimate way in which people who don't already know you will find you. Okay, so go out there and search those keywords that are going to be able to find you with the location associated. Now, Google very frequently can go ahead and find you, right? So they know where you are when you're doing a search. But it really is helpful to put in the location in the search criteria that you enter, and that basically helps someone who might be a couple towns over or maybe in another state. When they type in that search, they'll be able to geolocate the search criteria that Google uses for that area when you're doing the search. So you just add in the location there, and that's helpful to sort of see how you show up locally. Okay. Finally, you need to Google you, and you need to Google your key staff. The reason for that is many times local small businesses, you are your business. People are going to be Googling you as much as they are going to probably be Googling the business name. In my case, people don't Google my business name. They don't really actually care anything about my business. The most Google searches that people do are about my name and, my services. So, I think that's a far more often a situation in service-based businesses than product-based businesses. So pay attention to obviously your situation, your circumstances. But if you have key staff who are out there publishing material, you should know it. And this is not so much an HR issue. Leave that to HR and the sort of that world. I'm more worried about what it looks like from a marketing perspective. So you should really be Googling them and seeing what's being published about them, because if they're a big part of your business, and most small businesses don't have the luxury of having key staff being a small part or behind the scenes part of a business, their names are also tied to your brand. And you want to make sure that you know what is being said about them and about you and your business and them, on Google. So good idea just to search all of those things, and also to clear up anything that might be false or improper that's being published out there. You can go ahead and correct those things, reach out to the people who are publishing those things, and make those corrections. So it's always good just to start there so that you're aware of where you're positioned on Google, right? So always a good thing there. All right, next up is optimizing for Google, and this really is a little bit more just basically positioning squared, right? So it's how to make content and how to actually get the content that you're already publishing looking good for Google, okay? We're going to get a little technical here, but just bear with me if you have questions. Like I said, Tracy's there to take your questions, and I'm happy to answer them. So optimizing for Google is really all about making this is sort of like romance 101, right? You're going courting someone across the room. You want to make sure that you look good. You want to smile. You want to do all of the things that are going to show interest. And this is between you and Google, right? Because the person who's doing the search, they don't even get to find you yet until Google puts you into the index and decides that you're good enough to show it to the user on the opposite side. So you really need to make sure that you're courting Google, even though there's a human on the other end. And I always talk about the fact that, always remember that every communication you're having is with a human, right? There's another heart and mind on the other side. But when it comes to search engine optimization and creating content, optimizing for Google really means understanding Google well enough so that you're able to create content and really woo Google to want to show you more often. And that requires some, basic common sense, right? The uncommon common sense of business. And then the other side is some technical know-how. And let's go over those items so that you're aware. All right. So first and foremost, let's talk about mobile optimization. Okay, it's really important today that you mobile optimize your website. As I said at the top of the webinar, more than, I think it's like 56%. There's some percentage of all searches today are being done on a mobile device, meaning someone is, whether they're sitting on their couch or they're walking on the street or in their car, hopefully not driving, you know, we're all doing searches on our mobile devices. And that means that your website needs to be able to display to the mobile user. If you don't, in essence, you just kind of don't exist to them. So they could be standing a block away from your business, and your business could totally be the solution to their want or need, right? Whether it's your day spa or it's your, you know, your butcher or whatever it is, you know, they could want to walk into your shop or walk into your office to get your services or your products, and they do a search and they find someone who's 3 blocks away who's probably not as good, and they're going to go ahead and go to that business because they're the ones who got the reviews, they're the ones who optimized for Google, and they're being found. So you're losing business for not having mobile optimized websites. Okay? To start off, Google has created a really great tool called the Test My Site tool. And if you go to testmysite.thinkwithgoogle.com, and the URL is there on your screen, you'll be able to go to the test tool and be able to see, you'll get a score that will tell you, you'll actually get 3 different scores, that will tell you whether or not your site is actually mobile optimized and friendly for someone who is visiting as a mobile user. And it tests things like, you know, how is your, you know, the technical components of the website set up, how is the speed of your website. Speed is a big issue, and you can test all of your various sites. You know, if you have one website or if you have a blog and a website that are separate from one another, test them all and see what they are. Google then gives you a checklist of things that you can do to fix those issues so that you are mobile optimized and you are being best seen by users. Okay, so again, you know, there's a lot of technical stuff going on here, but for the most part, if you're using a tool like WordPress, or if you're using a self-publishing tool like a Squarespace or Weebly or one of those other ones, Wix and such, then you know you can do the testing, and then you have support to go to and say, hey, these are the issues that have been presented to me. How do I overcome them? If you've developed on another platform through a web developer, go ahead and make sure that you talk to your web developer about those issues that apply to your mobile optimization and get them fixed. It's so important for you to be able to be seen by mobile. I can't stress it enough. But Google has done the heavy lifting here for you, at least on the front end, of being able to help you test your site, look at what's going well, what's going wrong, and being able to fix those things. Okay, so mobile optimize your website. Next up, and this is where I've got to sort of be the bearer of bad news, for those of you who don't have a blog, it's that time. It is time to start a blog, and I don't mean just like, okay, well, we should look into it. No, really, you need to start planning to launch your blog today. The more content you create and the more timely and relevant that content is to the intent of the user searching, both on mobile and desktop, the greater your ranking is going to be on Google. The better you're optimized, the better you're wooing Google to show you to more users. If you are not blogging, you're basically leaving money on the table, okay? It's very similar to mobile in the sense that if you're not mobile optimized, you're not showing up to mobile users. Basically, if you're not creating content that's informing, entertaining, and persuading users, then you are just not available to Google. There's just not enough content on a small business website by itself that is, product page, services page, contact, testimonials, a home page, and an about us. That's just not enough for Google to be able to know that you're serious about business. So Google has decided that they want basically a lot of content and a lot of very incisive content, right? Discrete content that is, 4 corners to the content, not that it's hidden, but that the content itself answers a question, provides information in a very, very specific, sort of like a bite size or a chunk, right? We want lots of pages with these little bite size or chunks of information to answer people's specific questions. And that's done so well with a blog that it's really imperative for the small business owner to get that and to do that today, okay? Now, blogs come in lots of different shapes and sizes, except the only one that I want you to do is one where it's actually published on a website, okay? So a couple of options here. One is to actually start a blog where it actually lives on your website. You can also go to WordPress .com and create and launch a site there. Google has their own with Blogger. You can go to blogger.com. All of these are free except to the extent that you will have to have a domain. Okay, so whether that's, if you go to wordpress.com, it's going to have your small business your small business blog's name .wordpress.com. Do not use that link. Neither would you use the Blogger one, right? So it would be your small business blog name .blogspot.com. I want you to go ahead and create a custom domain name or what's called a subdomain of your current website, which is either blog.yourbusinessname.com or a new blog URL, something like yoursmallbusinessblogname.com, and basically hide the .wordpress.com URL altogether or the .blogspot.com URL altogether. We don't want those shown. We want to be able to control that URL because it's your brand. And if for some reason someday WordPress goes under or Blogger decides to be sunset by Google, Google will do it. Google will shut down a product if it doesn't think it's going to be useful for the future. So do not think that you can just use that .blogspot or .wordpress.com site without having a domain in front of it. Okay, you should have your own domain for those. Otherwise, the products are pretty much free. Okay, so it's a pretty inexpensive project if you want it off your site. A third option is to go out there and start a YouTube channel or a Vimeo channel, which are both the first and I think second. I'm not sure how large Vimeo is these days, but YouTube is the largest video search engine and social network on the web, right? They're owned by Google, so as you can imagine, publishing videos on YouTube and then syndicating them to your own website is a very, very powerful way to optimize for Google, okay? So again, I'll say it, start a blog and start a blog today. Make sure that, as I said before, Google really loves bite-sized information. It loves these manageable chunks of information that answers specific questions of the users, right? So if I want to know, how tall Tom Cruise is, right? Or how, what was Meryl Streep's, first film, right? Google provides those answers for me because they source it from Wikipedia articles and other kinds of databases across the internet and then provides that information to me. Well, when it comes to local small business, well, those issues can't be easily sourced, right? So if I'm looking for a very specific answer regarding, say, a tax issue in, Richmond, okay? Well, that's probably something where I'd have to find an expert, probably a CPA who's based in Richmond who can answer that question for me. Well, I want to be able to type in that question and for your blog to be the answer to that question. Google will then place you up front in terms of search engine at the top of the search results because you're the most appropriate answer because you're local, you're the CPA, and you have this manageable chunk of information, a link that someone will go to and be able to find the information within that page, okay? So you want to have one keyword or key phrase, that is, you're going to answer one major question per page on your blog or on your website. Okay, so we really want to make sure that you go ahead and answer just one issue per page, and there are some exceptions to that rule, but for the most part, we really want to pay attention to one keyword or key phrase. Combination of keywords is a key phrase on every page, and every blog post, by the way, is its own page on your website. So when I say page and or blog post, I just mean another page, right? Each of them are individual pages. Next up is a minimum word count when it comes to content. Now, Google doesn't necessarily publish what that is, but we generally know that a minimum of 200 words. Some people, engage people to say a minimum of 300 words, but it doesn't really matter. A minimum of 200 words, I think, will be good enough for most people. Again, the point is that write for value. Okay, so while I'm telling you that you have to have a minimum of 200 words, if value means that it takes 400 or 600 or 2,000 words in order to explain the answer to that question, then that's what it takes, okay? But you really can't write 20 words on every page on your website. You can see the big problem with that on many small business e-commerce websites, right? You have a shop and you put 50 words on the page and then you go on with your day, And in reality, Google doesn't really see that so well, especially if you're not using the other tools that Google has, like the Google Shopping tools and that kind of thing. So if you're not syndicating into their feed, it's not very helpful. So you have to figure out another way in order to be useful, and that's by answering those questions. FAQs are a very, very powerful thing. Just don't put all the FAQs on one page. They need to be on separate pages, right? So maybe you have a page called FAQs with each of the questions being a link to another page that answers the question. Then you now have basically a blog, but it's just called FAQ, and you're just taking the frequently asked questions of your clients and publishing them as individual pages. And again, they're answering local, issues, local questions for that particular, customer's needs. All right. Next up is where we sort of start to get sort of a little bit more complicated, but we should really pay attention to some of the things that we're doing on our small business websites. Google does not like white text on a white background, okay? These are called black hat tricks, and so once upon a time people would actually write, a bunch of keywords that are associated with their website, put it black text on black background or white text on a white background, and then they would just put a pretty image and presume that Google would then show them to the rest of the world because they had all of these appropriate keywords for that page. Well, Google doesn't like that, obviously, because that's not the most valuable content to the user, and so they will go ahead and penalize those websites that interact and engage in those what are called black hat techniques. So don't do them, right? But the flip side to that are what are called white hat techniques. These are the ways in which we search engine optimize our websites so that Google will be able to see us and see us in the best possible light, right? One is text styling. It's actually really important that with text styling, which is bold, italics, underline, and basically what are called the headings, right? So you have heading 1, heading 2, heading 3. These are basically, how you in Microsoft Word or other word processing applications, you can see how basically if you change something to a heading 1, it's the biggest and boldest and maybe italicized and so on and so forth. Those text stylings actually make a big difference to Google on the page. Google pays attention to what you're styling because it's looking for the architecture, the infrastructure, and how you're actually organizing the information on the page. So if something has a heading 1, which is an H1 tag in HTML, which is the hypertext markup language, basically the coding that we use for the front end of the website, we now use HTML and CSS. HTML, as I said, and CSS, which is cascading style sheets, which is structure. So how we actually display the format of the words and images and videos on the page. So we use HTML and CSS to basically style the text, and the way in which we do that really tells Google something about what's important on the page. For example, if we put the keywords for the page in an H1 tag, well, Google knows that's more important than us putting some other set of words in an H2 or an H3 or just in the body of the text. So we really want to make sure that we put our keywords, our primary keyword for that page or blog post, in our H tags, right? So if it's H1 or H2 that you're using, whatever the highest level heading tag is that you're using or the heading styling that you're using, you want to make sure that you do that. You want to bold your keywords, right? Because bolding tells Google that, well, if this is bolded in the paragraph and this same keyword is used in the heading of the page, well, that's really peculiar. Why would they bold the same word that they used in the heading? Well, it must be important about this page. Same thing with italicization or underlining, right? This is going to tell not only the user, but it's also going to tell Google that this is important. Okay, so we really want to pay attention to those things. All right, images, hyperlinks. Hyperlinking is the same thing as bolding or italicizing, right? We want to hyperlink within the page. We want to also optimize images and video for Google. Now, image optimization just means making sure that it's a web-ready image, meaning that it's not too big for a user to load, and making sure that what's called alt text, ALT, just Google it, ALT text is added to the images. You want to also make sure the images are named so that you can read them. Like, you should be able to tell what an image is based on the name of the image, not just looking at it. Okay, so if an image is 527x59 .png or .jpg, well, that doesn't mean anything to me. But if it says, CPA helping, Roanoke client with business tax returns, well, now I know what that is, right? So really name your images and any video that you might put on your website in that same way. As well, you should probably host your video on YouTube and then embed them on your website. Typically hosting video, especially large videos on your website, is only going to drag it down and make it slower, which makes Google not send you more traffic. So make sure that you do that. Okay, a couple just very minor things, and then I'm going to close out with the third component, which is monitoring on Google. So local phone number and physical address. Google really looks for local small businesses by some very important data that you put on your website. That important data means your local phone number and physical address. That includes your area code and exchange, okay, which is area code is the first 3 digits, exchange is the second 3 digits. Those 3 digits, in the center are very important because they identify a series of zip codes associated with, neighborhoods and so on and so forth. So Google really looks to those local phone numbers. If you have an 800 number or otherwise, that's fine. It is what it is. But if you do have a local area code and exchange that geolocates your business, then you should use that number over 800 numbers. Physical address, again, you may not want to publish it if you're a service-based home business. That's fine, but you want to make sure that if you do have a physical retail store or other kinds of places, that you're putting them on your website so that Google can go ahead and know where you are so that it can position people to send them to you. You also want that higher up on your website than lower down on your website. You want it as high as possible on your website logically so that people can go ahead and find that information, but also so that Google can index it. Google really only indexes the first 200 words or so of every web page, hence the minimum 200 words. So Google looks for that, that text within that first part of the website. So you pretty much want that on almost every page of your website in essence. You can have locales, and I'm not going to get into this too specifically, but basically a locale page for each product or service on your website means that you can actually create background pages. These are pages that are not in your site's navigation, okay, that are then geared toward providing that product or service in that specific area. So you might have 5 or 6 pages of the same services page or same product page for different locales, okay? So if I provided, say I had 5 barbershops, right? It would be natural for me to then have 5 pages that talked about each of the locations, what's unique about them, and how I provided services in that particular jurisdiction, okay? So that's what it's all about. Again, I'm happy to answer questions regarding that, but locale pages for each product and service can be very, very powerful for basically giving Google a better understanding of, okay, this is where you service your business in this area, this is where you service your business in that area, and just know that those have to be unique pages. Okay, so we've talked about positioning and optimizing, and just briefly I wanted to cover monitoring Google, because it really doesn't make any sense to do all of this and not to have the business data underneath it to be able to understand what Google is doing and how you can use that information in order to do better, both profitability-wise, customer service-wise, and then generalized in marketing, okay? So there are 4 products I wanted to talk about. The first one is Google Analytics. Google Analytics is Google's product for being able to understand what's happening when someone is visiting your website, and also social properties and email and so on and so forth. So looking at social media and other things. One point I wanted to make here that people frequently don't glean from what I say, and so I'm saying this explicitly. Notice that I said regarding social media, I didn't really reference anything more than a blog that you controlled or YouTube for social media. That's because Google doesn't index Facebook, other than your Facebook page. They don't index your posts on Facebook. Twitter is indexed, so your tweets are indexed, but there's a limited amount that you can actually drive traffic to Twitter, to your website based on those things, even though it's powerful. Instagram doesn't allow links, so we could just forget Instagram, which is owned by Facebook. Most messaging apps are not indexed by Google. So if we think about, Snapchat and is not indexed, if you think about Pinterest and so on and so forth, Pinterest is not indexed by Google. So really, when it comes to optimizing for Google, remember that social media is not, you can optimize for the specific network, but you're not optimizing for Google. Okay, so if you're really trying to find web traffic to drive traffic to your website through Google, social media is not the place to be looking for that. You use social media for lots of other reasons, right? And definitely for driving traffic to your website, but it's driving traffic directly from the social network, not from Google. Okay, frequently a misnomer, and the only exception to that are Twitter and Google's own social network, which is Google+. Okay, so just pay attention to that. But Google Analytics does look at the social media, metrics of when people do visit your site and other information about that. And I'll show you the interface shortly. Google Alerts is your way of being able to set up regular searches that then come to you. Instead of you having to go out to Google and doing the search, basically it searches and then gives the information to you either via email or an RSS feed, a rich site summary feed that you can subscribe to, and tells you what's being put out there via these Google searches, and I'll talk about that momentarily. Next up is Google Search Console, also formerly known as the Webmasters, Google Webmasters, and the Google Webmaster Central, and that's basically your ability to see what Google is seeing, basically what Google is seeing about your website behind the scenes to be able to make you optimize it better. And then the Google My Business dashboard, which is basically your ability to see what reviews are out there, responding to reviews, seeing what information is being published about you, hours of operation, all of those kinds of things on Google to be able to better know what's going on and what's being seen and said about you. Okay, so first and foremost is Google Analytics. Just as you can see here, this is the old analytics interface, and it basically goes through and shows you each of your websites. You can have things called profiles and properties, and in each of those you can manage a grouping of these particular areas. So inside of an account you can have several accounts that they're called, just call them profiles, and then inside of those you can basically manage individual properties. So you can basically have your business name, and then underneath your business name you can group all of your various websites. If you have multiple websites, if you have a blog that's separate from your business, you can keep them all together and see how that traffic interacts and engages with one another. You can see how long people spend on your websites, bounce rate, basically when someone visits a single page and then leaves that website, and also group basically conversion goals, right? So what happens when you set a goal, what do you want people to do when they visit your website, and how successful is your website and making that happen. Google is going through a transition to a new user interface, and so it will match the current stylings of the material design sort of method that they've developed. And so you'll see on the screen right now is a mock-up of what the new navigation will look like. It'll be a simpler navigation. It'll look pretty snazzy. So looking forward to seeing the new user interface. But really, every website that allows you to put Google Analytics on it, it is free and it gives you so much information. The only other point I'll make is that you can subscribe to reports and then have those reports emailed to you. So I rarely ever log into Google Analytics. I just have it, email me the report. That is, I don't log in with my own volition, right? The report comes to me. I see exactly the information that I want. If I want to drill down, then I go to Google Analytics, log in, and drill down into the data. But being able to do that is really, really powerful. Next up is Google Alerts. You can set up alerts for your business name, your key employees, your competition, and basically have it all send it to you on a schedule. Okay, Google Search Console basically is your tool for being able to go out there and have Google tell you the health of the websites. Is the sitemap, which is a document that's published on behalf of Google, what is the sitemap showing Google? Is there some kind of error? Is there malware on your website? Is there some kind of problem that's blocking Google from doing that? Google will actually show you, message you, so that you can fix those things and then get your site back into better health. So Google Search Console, again, free. So is Google Alerts. Make sure that you do it. Finally is the Google My Business dashboard. And while I've blocked out some of my client data here on the screen, you can see that the Google My Dashboard interface shows you each of your business locations and gives you the ability to manage those locations, and then even more data when you click on the Manage Location button. So each of the individual cards, you click on it, it takes you to a location, and it shows you your page, information, and ways in which to show yourself better to the Google Maps interface. It allows you to be able to respond to reviews here, so that if you need to respond to a review, this is how you do it. And you do this by going to google.com/business, and you log in through that as well. Okay? So before we do Q&A, just very, very quickly, for those of you who don't know, I'm one of the 30 Google Small Business Advisors for Google Small Business, which is the team at Google that helps to provide small businesses like yourself with information about it. We provide all kinds of resources and so on and so forth through the Google Small Business community. That's available on the website that's on your screen right now. Notice the www.en.advertisercommunity.com. Go to that website. You can sign in through your Google account, and you'll see Google Small Business, Google My Business. You'll see the Google Analytics, Google AdWords communities, all there. If you have questions, post them in the appropriate communities, and myself, as well as the 29 other advisors, the Google Small Business team, and the user community are all there to be able to support and answer questions. So please feel free to go ahead and check that out. And Tracy, if you have any questions in the pipeline, need to close out, let's do that.
Oh boy, do we. We got lots of questions today, Ray. The first is, I don't have a business. I have a hobby website that's only been in existence for 1 month. At this point, my site doesn't show up on Google at all, although my Facebook page does if I Google the name of the site. As I'm pretty sure I'm well set up for SEO, should I expect it to take some time before I start showing up on Google after I get more, after I get more visitors to the site?
Yes, so that's where Google Search Console will be a real help to you. I don't know what your optimization is like, but what I would do is I would visit the Google Search Console, verify the property, your website with Google Search Console, and then let Google Search Console guide you in terms of whether or not Google is actually indexing your website. So that would be my first line of offense, is to go to Google Search Console, google.com/webmasters, and go to the console to get that answer.
Okay. What can be done about unfavorable / and/or correct information on Google? I have found editing Google Map contact info very difficult. Google seems to have an edit feature available, but it's proven ineffective. I've made multiple attempts to correct an address or marker on a map, and it still isn't correct.
Okay, so what I would do is I would go to www.en.advertisercommunity.com, log in, and post your question there in the Google communities, in the appropriate one. In this case, the Google My Business community. Myself or one of the other small business advisors or somebody on the Google Small Business team will be able to help you get those things corrected. Generally, the google.com/business, which is the Google My Business dashboard, is very easy. So I'm not sure when the last time it is that you've tried this, but once you're in that user interface, being able to edit is literally just clicking in a field and changing the information to what's correct. So go ahead in there as well. I also recommend that you go to ubl.org, which is the Universal Business Listing website, ubl.org, and make sure that your information there is correct. That is pretty much the universal place where businesses are listed and seeded to the other websites that are out there, whether that be Merchant Circle and many of these other websites that publish business information. So go to ubl.org, claim your listing, make sure that's correct, but also check out the advertiser community and make sure that you ask your questions in there and get them to help you sort of correct the information so that it's properly up to date, because it's really important that it is up to date, and make sure that you give enough information. It's really important that when you do ask your questions in the advertiser community, be explicit, be very specific about what details are incorrect. So is it a phone number that's incorrect? Is it an address? And make sure that you ask the questions very specifically so that the folks, the users community, as well as the advertisers and Google Small Business team can help you correctly.
Does Google share and/or sell user info to third parties? Can we call Google? Can they call users? If so, how do we know that? their incoming calls from Google are legitimate?
There's no real major way in which for you to be able to determine whether a call is truly from Google or not. Google will very infrequently call you, but when they do, you should definitely answer the phone. They won't ask you for any information that will be identifiable, so they're going to ask you questions that will be verifiable. So that's pretty much it. Google collects a lot of information about us, and it's very important for them to be able to do what they do. Google is part of what's called the Data Liberation Foundation, and so that means that you can go ahead and delete any information that Google does have about you and delete your Google account. So you do have the ability to be very, very surgical about deleting the information about you on Google. When it comes to your business, Google collects a lot of information about your business as well, and we want them to have that information so that they're able to bring more people to us. So Google does do that. Google does not sell your information in the specific sense. They use that information to be able to better organize the what do you call it, the auction that's used for Google AdWords, and also for being able to connect the user to your website in terms of that content and information. So it's all anonymized, so they're not selling your information to anyone for any particular reason.
Okay.
I think I answered all those questions.
I think so too. If not, the
Okay,
person can re-add them.
okay, good.
Do you recommend a blog that's separate from the website? For example, we have a blog, but it's posted to our website.
Right. So I always recommend having the website, if you're able to, having your website be directly within your website, right? So yourbusinessname.com/blog and having it built into your website. The second best is to basically have a website, an additional blog that's not on your website, but then making sure that you're regularly and clearly linking back to your website so that people know, and that's as easy as that every blog post at the very bottom you put a byline, I'm Ray Sidney Smith with W3 Consulting and W3 Web Services. Note that W3 Consulting and W3 Web Services are going to link back to my respective websites. We provide X and Y, and that's in every blog post. Now, even though the blog is not on my website directly, if someone's interested in my product or services, they can now click on that byline at the bottom of every blog post and be taken to my actual websites.
Okay. What's your opinion of QR codes with respect to driving traffic to websites? Effective, safe? I see many companies create free QR codes, but it's hard to know if these are considered trustworthy. Also, which demographic is inclined to use QR codes?
Okay, so I'm going to disagree with some of my colleagues, but I don't think the QR codes are worth investing in unless you have a very, very good reason. So if just out the gate you're thinking QR codes, then the answer is no. So no, no, no. The flip side to that is that now we have things called beacons, iBeacons, or other kinds of basically Internet of Things. Sometimes it's called NFC or RFID tagging. That's a little bit better than QR codes because most often than not, while they do usually include the installation of an app or something else like that, it is something that actually triggers automatically upon the user coming into contact or close to it. We frequently see this now today when a user tries to pay with their phone. If it's Android Pay or Apple Pay or Samsung Pay or one of those other programs, even at Walmart. Walmart has their app now. Although I think Walmart's is actually a QR code, but notwithstanding, the point is that it's the proximity, right, sensor that's picking up the code from the chip that's on your phone and authenticating that way. Those are going to be far more fruitful to your business for many, many different reasons I can't get into here and now, but that would be your better bet, is to look at that. If you're going to think about using QR codes in some way, shape, or form, look at programs like Belly, which is a loyalty and reward program that allows you to basically, give your users a QR code. You have a tablet that sits on your retail counter. People can scan it, and you can engage them with messaging as well as discounts and loyalty reward points and such for them to be able to use.
Okay. Do you recommend Google Voice numbers for small businesses?
I have frequently and many times recommended Google Voice to small businesses. I think it's a fantastic tool for the right small businesses, okay? Also note that Google Voice is going through a transition period right now. It's sort of like an orphan in Google, or basically Alphabet, the parent company to Google. It's sort of an orphan right now in the sense that we don't really know the future and the viability of Google Voice in its current branding, right? So Google Voice will eventually change. We're not sure how, but the current sort of rumor mill has it that there's some shakeup happening with regard to Google Voice. But I would still recommend using it. It's a fantastic tool. I mean, I've been using it for many, many years. The number you see on the screen is a Google Voice number, and not only because of my work with Google, but because I really love it. I think it's fantastic. If my mother calls that number, she's going to come through to me right now. If anybody else calls that number, it's going to go to voicemail. Google Voice knows so much, has so many, real-world applicable ways to manufacture how calls are handled. It's a really fantastic platform. So yes, I recommend it for the right small business with the right needs. This is not a cost savings measure, remember. You're still going to have phone lines, you're still going to have mobile lines. This is really for adding functionality that you otherwise wouldn't have. So if you have further questions, feel free to touch base with me via email and I'll be happy to answer them.
Okay. For those people that don't have a physical address, like a photographer typically travels to clients, they don't come to them, and they still want their site seen on Google, how should they handle that?
Right, so Google allows for you to basically have regions that you service. So you would, in the same Google My Business dashboard, you would go ahead and set up a listing. If you have a photo studio, you're just going to, instead of showing the address of your photo studio, you're going to show a service area. And included your website, where you're going to have your photo gallery and your portfolio and so on and so forth. All of those are going to be optimized to where those locations happened, right? So if you're doing a wedding, in Loudoun County, then obviously all the images and the gallery that page is sitting on is going to be optimized to have Loudoun County or Leesburg or what have you in, Purcellville and so on and so forth listed in there. If you do a wedding down in Roanoke, then obviously it's going to be about Roanoke and so on and so forth. So you're going to go ahead and optimize specific to those regions as opposed to optimizing to drive people directly to a specific point, which would be a retail photography studio or something like that.
Okay. So I'm going to start whittling the questions down since we're getting to the end of the hour.
Okay.
Do the small business advisors charge a fee? And I'm assuming that's referring to the Google, your 30.
So we as Google Small Business Advisors are volunteered. So in essence, we're pro bono, if you want to call it that. So when you ask questions of us in the Google Small Business community at the www.en.advertisercommunity.com, no one should be charging you for answering your questions in any of those 4 communities that I mentioned. And some of them are Google partners, whether that be AdWords or analytics or otherwise certified consultants. If you take them offline and you want to hire them for those services, many of them do that. But just going onto the community and asking questions is free.
Can you flash that website back up on the screen? You had another question to give there you go. So Tammy, who asked the question for the URL, there it is for you. Ray, do you have classes in the DMV area?
We frequently do classes at actually a variety of the SBDCs and other kinds of economic development organizations that have me. I have not done any public workshops on these materials as of yet in the district, sort of in the DMV area, but stay tuned.
Okay. Can you talk about the best way to get reviews for your company?
Sure. So as I said, sort of midway through the time frame, make sure that you are asking customers, whether that be on receipts, like literally just having a little, and what I really like is a retail shop that has a stamp that's a colored like red or green or blue or whatever. It's bright, and it basically, stamps onto every receipt, please review us on Google and Yelp or wherever you might want to, engage them. Never saying, please leave us a 5-star review or anything like that. Just basically, we'd love your feedback. Please review us on Google. And that will engage people to go ahead and look you up on Google Maps and go ahead and rate and review you and give you information. That's the most successful mechanism that I've seen to date. Two is providing that information on your website, right? So giving people a link to go ahead and take people to your website from, take people to your review site from your website. And if you email invoices, make sure that you ask people to review you from those. Basically, every interaction and engagement, you don't need to verbalize, literally say to every person, can you review us? But just having it on the material, and even just the stamping, right? Basically, the extra stamp makes people look at that stamped material on the receipt, and therefore clues them into the fact that the business is looking for feedback. So that's going to engage them more. Obviously, putting stickers on your retail windows if you have them, get them onto signs if you have those street side signs. Ask people to review you there, and really engage people in that way.
Okay. We have one more question. It's pretty specific, and we've come to the end of the hour. So I'm going to go ahead and close out the webinar so that folks, to respect people's time. And then after I close out, we'll get to the one last question specifically on blogging. Thank you all for participating today. Today's webinar was recorded and will be posted on the Virginia SBDC website under live webinars and recordings. Tomorrow you'll be receiving a follow-up email on the webinar, and there'll be an evaluation link in that email. Please help us to continue to improve our training by taking the time to complete the evaluation. If you want to fill that evaluation in now, I did put a link in the chat window, so you can click on that and fill out the evaluation. Our next webinar will be Evernote Your Small Business, or Evernote for Your Small Business, and that's November 10th. So the last question that we have is about blogging, and the question is specifically, I'm having a hard time getting my arms around how to implement a blog for a tourist-driven horseback riding outfitter, but I'm sure there are other people out there that kind of feel the same way. They're not really sure what to blog about.
Great. So I've actually developed a methodology for blogging in general, and I'm going to go over it very, very briefly here. But it uses the acronym BROODED. So write this down: BROODED, B-R-O-O-D-E-D. Right. So B is for brainstorming, R is for research, O is for organizing and outlining. The two O's: organize, outline. Then draft, edit, disseminate. I'll go over that again. Brainstorm, research, organize, outline, draft, edit, disseminate. Okay? Now, in the brainstorming area, you're going to go ahead and brainstorm. Like, go do some research after that. Figure out what people are blogging about, organize and outline it, and then draft, edit, and disseminate. The end result is that you're going to have a bunch of ideas about what you can blog about. Remember, if you're doing a weekly blog, that's basically 52 blogs a year, and that's not a lot of content, right? So if you're thinking 200 to 300 word blog posts, right, times 52, that's not a lot of content. But to Google, that's actually quite a lot of good content in their view of you. Okay, and so we really want to make sure that we're producing content that's of interest to our audience. What you need to do is, in your research phase, right, not only brainstorming what ideas you would write about categorically as well as specific topics, but also in the research side, going out there and looking at what other people are doing who are in that same category. I didn't quite get the specific horseback riding specificity, but go out there and search for other blogs that are writing about that, and you can basically put your spin on the same topics that they're blogging about, but for your region. And I think that there's nothing wrong with providing your voice and your ideas about the same topics, because Google is looking for this locally. Okay, they're not looking for it across the country. They're looking for it in your town, and someone looking for you in your town. So go out there and look at what other people are doing. It doesn't have to even be in the same country. You could find people who have a horse, riding facility in, Uruguay. If they're putting out great content, then see what they're doing, and Google Translate will translate it for you automatically. So, you don't have to worry about even language barrier. You can really find out what your, quote unquote competition is doing, although they're not really your competition. You can go out there and look and see what they're talking about, and then replicate that content with your voice in your area for your region.
Great. Thank you, Ray. That is our last question. Thank you, everyone, for participating today. See you on November 10th.